The Mediterranean breeze carried the scent of jasmine and salt as it swept across the resort grounds, brushing through the reception area and lifting the soft hum of waves crashing in the distance. I stood back, watching my daughter, Emma, with quiet pride as she carefully arranged her handmade place cards on the tables. Each card was adorned with delicate watercolor flowers she had painted herself, a gift she had inherited from her late father. At 7, she already had his talent, his eye for detail, and, as fate would have it, a patience for creating perfection that would soon be tested by the most trying person imaginable. My sister-in-law Diane, my patience were perfectly timed. Revenge, I muttered under my breath, a wry smile tugging at my lips. What is that child doing? Diane's voice cut through the soft morning air like a knife. She stood at the edge of the terrace in a gleaming white silk robe, her professional blowout already perfectly styled, her every hair in place as if the wind itself had to bend to her will. Those are not the place cards we ordered from Paris, she added, her tone sharp enough to make the staff freeze mid-step. I stepped forward, hoping to intervene, but Diane had already stormed toward Emma, her heels clicking like a warning across the marble floor. Oh, you must be one of the staffs. Children, she said with a saccharine smile that didn't reach her eyes. How charitable of them to bring you along. But we can't have you playing with the decorations. Why don't you run along to the kitchen? I'm sure they have some dishes you can wash. Emma's lower lip trembled. But Aunt Diane, it's... I made these for your wedding, Emma, she said softly, clutching the cards like fragile treasures. Diane laughed a sharp, high-pitched sound that drew the attention of her bridesmaids. Sweetie, I know you might see our staff as family, but you can't just go around claiming relations to the guests. Now run along before the real guests arrive. I watched my daughter's small shoulders slump as she gathered the carefully made cards, each one a piece of her heart. Every fiber of me wanted to step forward and remind Diane that this child was her brother's only niece. My own daughter, a person worthy of respect. But sometimes lessons are learned the hard way. Emma, honey, I called softly, my voice gentle as I crouched to her level. Why don't you take those to Mr. Marcus? He's been waiting to see your artwork. Marcus, our hotel manager, had been discreetly briefed on the situation. He understood as we did that Emma deserved to be treated with the reverence she was owed. At least by those who truly knew who we were. Diane finally noticed me, spinning around like a cat startled by a shadow. Her smile was venom wrapped in designer lipstick. Mrs. Torres, I didn't see you there. I trust you're here to oversee the service staff. Something like that, I replied calmly, my eyes on Emma. Though I must say, these cards your staff's child made are quite lovely, Diane scoffed. This is a 5-star resort wedding. Everything must be perfect. And speaking of which, you're not even dressed in the proper uniform. All staff must wear the correct attire. I glanced down at my dress, a simple handmade piece, elegant yet understated, the cost of which could easily eclipse Diane's entire wedding budget. Not that she needed to know that. Oh, don't worry about me. I have my own dress code exemption, I said, a faint smile playing on my lips. Exemption from whom? Her eyebrows knitted perfectly, a sculpted frown. Management, I said softly, my tone casual, as though discussing the weather. Now, about the breakfast service? Yes. Ensure everything is perfect, and keep that little girl out of sight. I won't have some maid's daughter ruining my photos, she snapped before strutting away, barking more orders at her actual wedding planner, complaining that the imported roses were not the precise shade of blush she had demanded. Throughout the morning, Diane's true colors revealed themselves against the pristine backdrop of the wedding. She made 3 servers cry over the temperature of the champagne. She demanded the beach be swept again because a single seashell was out of place. Every time she spotted Emma, she loudly reminded everyone within earshot that the help should keep their children under control. My brother James, Diane's soon-to-be husband, was conspicuously absent during these displays, likely hiding in his suite avoiding the chaos his fiancée had created. He had always been conflict-averse, which had allowed Diane to wedge herself into our lives 3 years ago with ease. Mrs. Torres, Marcus approached discreetly, leaning close. Everything is arranged as you requested. Though I must inform you, the bride has just demanded we replace all the breakfast pastries. Apparently they're not French enough. I nodded, observing Diane berate a young server for suggesting. The croissants were actually sourced from an award-winning local bakery. Let her make her demands, Marcus. Document everything, and Emma, she's fine, he said softly. Stronger than people think. I smiled, remembering my late husband's words. The ones he used to say about me, sometimes the best lessons come not from shielding someone, but from letting them reveal themselves. As the morning progressed, Diane's entitled behavior escalated. She managed to convince half the wedding party that Emma was part of some elaborate charitable initiative, where children of staff were granted a rare glimpse into luxury. The story grew more intricate with every retelling, filled with dramatic exaggeration about how generous she was for allowing such a privilege on her wedding day. I stayed in the background, observing and waiting. My phone buzzed with a message from James. Where are you? Diane's telling everyone you couldn't afford a proper outfit for the wedding, so you're helping in the kitchen instead. Don't worry about me, I texted back. Just make sure you're in the main hall at 11 a.m. sharp. You won't want to miss what happens next. The morning sun climbed higher over the resort's pristine beaches, and with it, Diane's demands grew increasingly outrageous. She thrived in her self-made drama, playing the part of the wealthy, benevolent bride who had graciously allowed her working-class sister-in-law and child to witness the magic of her perfect day. Little did she know, the real performance had not yet begun. At precisely 11 a.m., I positioned myself in the main reception hall, watching Diane hold court among her bridesmaids. She was in the middle of explaining in great detail how she had rescued our family from obscurity simply by marrying James, when the resort owner's liaison approached her. Mrs. Student-to-be Parker, the liaison said, her professional smile unwavering. We would like to discuss some concerns regarding your special requests. Diane's face darkened. Now I'm about to get married in 3 hours. Can't you handle it? I'm afraid not. There are some payment discrepancies that need immediate attention. I watched Diane's perfectly powdered face flush. She had been running up astronomical charges all weekend, assuming James' credit cards could handle it. What she didn't know is that I had already flagged those cards for review. Fine, she snapped. Where is this honor? I'll set them straight about how things work, eighth-end establishments. Actually, I stepped forward, smoothing me simple dress. The honor is right here. The silence that fell over Therum was delicious. What are you talking about? Diane allowed nervously. Stop playing games and get back to the kitchen where you belong, Mrs. Parker, the liaison continued. May I have present? Mrs. Isabella Torres, majority owner of this resort and 3 others in our portfolio. Diane's champagne glass slipped from her manicured fingers, shattering on the marble floor. That's impossible. She's nobody. She works in some tiny office downtown. Actually, I smiled. That tiny office is headquarters of Torres International Resorts. We keep a low profile. It helps us see people's true characters. Thebert's maids began whispering among themselves. One was already frantically on her phone, no doubt Googling me name. But James never said, my brother respects my privacy, I said calmly. Though I'm curious why yo thought I worked in the kitchen. Was it because of my heritage or just your general attitude toward service staff? The Haines' mouth opened and closed. Like Kia designer-clad fish. I didn't mean oh me god. One bridesmaid gasped, staring at her phone. Torres International. They own like half the luxury properties. And that's enough, Melissa. Diane hissed. But the damage was done. Now, I continued pulling out a folder. Let's discuss your special requests, demanding your staff's children be hidden, making 3 servers cry, insisting we import water from the French Alps at midnight. Those services were promised. Diane's voix rose an octave. This is my wedding day. A wedding you're holding at my resort. I reminded her where you've been treating my daughter, your niece, like an unwanted servant. The color drained from her face. Emma is, but you said you were just I never said anything. I corrected her. You made assumptions. Very loud, very public assumptions. James chose that moment to walk in. What's going on? I heard shouting. Your sister. Diane spun toward him, has been lean to everyone, playing some sick game, pretending to be staff. Actually, James crossed his arms. My sister has been exactly who she's always been. You're the one who's been pretending, Diane. I held up my hand as Diane started to protest. You have two choices. Either I can cancel this wedding right now well within my rights as the owner dealing with a hostile linguist or Diane whispered, or you can apologize publicly to every staff member you have abused to my daughter. And then we're going to have a very serious discussion about your future behavior as part of this family. The bridesmaids were now openly recording everything on their phones. Diane's carefully crafted society wedding was quickly becoming the exact kind of spectacle she'd hoped to avoid. You're bluffing. She tried one last time. You can't just I picked up my phone. Marcus, please begin the shutdown procedures we discussed and make sure everyone receives their cancellation buses. Wait, Diane's cry echoed through the hall. I'll apologize. I raised an eyebrow. To everyone? She nodded, defeated. Starting with Emma, who, by the way, spent weeks making those place cards so you threw away. As if on cue, Emma peeked around the corner, still clutching her handmade cards. The look on Diane's face, yes, she realized just how badly she misjudged everything was worth every second of restraint I'd shown. What followed was what the staff would later call the great humbling of Diane Parker. My soon-to-be sister-in-law. Still in her wedding gown, personally apologizing every server, housekeeper, and kitchen staff member she had belittled. Each apology seemed to physically pain her like swallowing tiny shards of her shattered pride. But the real moment of truth came with Emma. Emma's sweetheart, Diane knelt down, her $15,000 dress spilling around her. I am so sorry for how I treated you. Your place cards are beautiful, and I was wrong to throw them away. Emma, showing more grace than her aunt ever had, simply nodded. It's okay, Doc, I can make more. Maybe ones that show how people really are, not who they pretend to be. Several of the bridesmaids tried to hide their smiles out of the mouths of babes indeed. Feuding will proceed, I announced to the gathered crowd, but with some changes. Emma will be the flower girl as originally planned before Diane decided she wasn't suitable. And those lovely place cards will be used. Each one hand-painted by the resort owner's daughter. Diane's face went through several interesting colors before settling on acidly pale shade. Of course, she managed to squeak as the guests began filing in for the ceremony. I pulled James aside. You knew this would happen, didn't you? That's why you insisted on having the wedding year. My brother smiled sheepishly. Diane needed to learn that our family doesn't measure worth by bank accounts or social status. What better way than letting her discover her simple sister-in-law owns the very ground she walks on? The wedding proceeded, though not quite as Diane had planned, every time she began to slip back into her entitled behavior. A quiet word from me or a meaningful glance would deflate her immediately. It was amazing how quickly someone could change you and their perfectly crafted social image was at stake. During their reception, Emma's place cards drew countless compliments. Guests marveled at the detail, the artistic talent, and most importantly, the heart behind each own. Diane sat at the main table, watching as her carefully constructed arcade crumbled. Around her, Mrs. Torres, Marcus approached me near the end of the evening. The staff wanted you to know this was better than any bonus they could have received. I smiled, watching Emma teach some of the younger guests to paint with watercolors at a hastily arranged art table. Sometimes the best lessons come with the heaviest price tags. As the night wound down, Diane approached me one last time. Her makeup was slightly smeared, her perfector showing signs of wear. I did just wrong Emma and the staff, did I? She said quietly. I've been horrible to you since the day we met. All because you thought money and status were all that mattered, I finished for her. The question is, what have you learned? She looked around at the resort at the staff who had created this perfect date despite her behavior. At Emma still happily painting with her new friends. That I have a lot of growing to do if you want to be worthy of this family. Good ends were. I nodded. Your first test starts tomorrow. You'll be spending 1 week working alongside our staff, learning exactly what it takes to create the luxury experience you so casual-eyed did. But our honeymoon has been rescheduled. James appeared beside her. Consider this your first marriage lesson, honey. In this family we earn our place. As they left for their room, Emma came running up with her last watercolor of the night. It showed our entire family, including Diane, all wearing the resort staff uniforms. Look, Mom, I painted on Diane's future. I hugged my daughter close, remembering Gantither. Young girl who once started at the bottom of a resort, dreaming of more. Sometimes, sweetie, the best revenge isn't showing people how powerful you are. It's teaching them why power isn't what matters at all. Emma nodded wisely. That's why you let her be mean all morning. That's right. Because some of these people need to see them Sylvescally before they can change. Did you learn that when you were building your hotels? I smiled, thinking of my own journey from housekeeper to owner. No, sweetheart. I learned that from your father. He always said, true class isn't about what you own. It's about how you treat others. Together we watched last guest depart. The stars twinkling over the Mediterranean. Tomorrow, Diane would begin her education in humility. But tonight, Wei had taught an even more valuable lesson. Never judge a book by its cover, especially when that book owns the entire